welcome to another episode of the Wayfare podcast. This is John, and you are listening to episode 4 of the show. Before we jump into it today and talk about just podcast layouts and how your show is going to flow, I just want to do a quick reminder and say that rating and reviewing the show is super helpful, and subscribing if you are watching this on YouTube, leaving comments, creating conversations. It's all part of how we grow each other's show, build each other up. And with that being said, let's get right into it. So like I mentioned, it is all about podcast layouts today. On the workbook, and if this is your first time joining us, you can, we're going through a workbook today, or workbook through the series, and you can get that by following the links in the show notes if you're watching the video, or description if you're, I always get it really flipped in my head, description if you're watching this on YouTube, or show notes if you're listening to it audio only. But you can download it. There's some links on however you listen to it and however you gather information on the episode. There are links to this, and I'll try to make it fairly obvious. But if you're working through this series with us and you're working through the workbook, this is a quick one-pager, page 10. And it's just a list of open-ended lines for you to fill out. But it's podcast layout. And what do I mean when I say that? So if you're listening to any show, any podcast show, you'll notice that there's a pretty decent flow that they that the podcaster goes through from start to finish. So typically a pretty good standard that you'll notice. And if you're watching the show, you'll notice too that there's a intro sequence, there's the main episode, the main content, and then there's the outro sequence. And most of those sequences are compiled of, and we'll talk audio only just for the sake of simplicity. There's the music with there's music with intros. So that can be like, a formal intro, very segmented, like, hey, thank you so much for checking out the show. This is such and such. And in this show, we talk about this, that, and the other thing. And then it segues into the main content. And the main content's much more structured as far as like, it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, information. Cool. And then it can transition into the outro, which is, thanks again for listening. Be sure to subscribe, follow, leave a review, share with a friend, with music overlaying, and then the episode's done. That's pretty well laid out. And if you're kind of writing this all out on the workbook, it'll be like, section 1, music, or line 1, music, line 2, intro, line 3, main episode, line 4, outro, line 5, music. And there's a little bit of layering to that too. I mean, this isn't like a hard, fast thing. Line 4 could be outro with music or whatever. But again, that's kind of the thing, is just to put it out in front of you and be like, this is what the show is laid out to look like, hence podcast layout. For a stronger example for me with this show, I would say, line 1, and this is video, so it's going to get a little bit more nuanced, but line 1 is intro graphic in music. Line 2 is show introduction or episode introduction, because I kind of like blur it a little bit with how I discuss and talk. I said earlier in this episode, before we jump into it, don't forget to do X, Y, and Z, whatever. And then line 3 would be episodes content. So we're talking about, podcast layout. That would be episodes content. And then line 4 would probably be like call to action, I would probably call it, which is, again, liking, subscribing, leaving a review, et cetera, et cetera. And then the next line would be outro graphic. And that's probably what my layout would look like. That's probably what my show flow would look like. And I would say that this is a pretty important thing to also like write out and have on hand, because, whoever you end up working with, whether it's yourself or with a post producer, when I have people fill this paperwork out and give it to me, I'll use it as a reference point to then go into our software and kind of like lay it all out and then start like piecing things together and merging things together a little bit more fluidly. So yeah, trying to think of anything else that really is kind of well associated with this topic. I think it can be pretty intense if you kind of do more nuanced details, like if you're doing kind of like a narrative show thing, like a true crime thing, and you're kind of doing start to finish, because it's kind of like, okay, when do I use, like, when am I going to write in here the outsourced audio material? And really, I mean, it can be pretty nuanced if you want to have that written out for yourself so you can keep track of what things look like. But again, that's all part of like the main episode. And you can probably write down like, main content, parentheses, this, that, and the other thing. But keep in mind too that every episode for those type of material oriented content is going to be very different one from the other. Like there could be an episode where you don't have any outsourced audio clippings. Again, true crime, if you want to have like a court case document, documented audio file inserted, you're not going to have one maybe for like every episode, but for some episodes. But I think, this is a very open-ended discussion point, and it's really meant to help you. I think that's pretty much it for this episode. It's a pretty simple and straightforward one. I have 8 lines on here. Feel free to make your own. This is not set in stone to 8. If you need 10, if you need 20 would be a lot, but again, it's for you. What do you need? I don't think I need for this show personally like any more than 4 or 5, but yeah, keep it simple, keep it helpful. I think that's pretty much it. That it's a shorter episode today. I'm kind of impressed with myself. But if there's anything, if you have any questions on this, if you need any more guidance on it, if you need any more help, feel free to reach out. There's a link in the show notes description. Don't want to get it super twisted like I did earlier in this episode, but there's in the description or show notes, there's contact information as far as like, you can check out my website. Feel free to reach out. There should be some emails on there for you to get in contact with us. Again, if you leave comments in the video form of this to kind of get a discussion going, that's super cool, super helpful. And again, this document is super open for whoever needs it. I'll be sure to be able to provide it for you if you want to download it and check it out. And thank you again for listening. Oh, please leave a review, share with a friend. Until the next episode, thank you so much.